Now, Adam Stirling on CFAX1070.
BC paramedics right now estimating that about 3/4 of all the calls coming into 911 dispatch at this time are related to suspicions of COVID-19 or other influenza-type symptoms, according to a release. First responders are asking British Columbians if they are experiencing an emergency, yes, of course, to call. However, there are other numbers that can provide information to you when it is not appropriate to call 911. For example, if you need information or a referral service, there's a specially made line here in BC that has been especially calibrated to the distinct needs of many senior citizens. It's 211. If you need to talk to a healthcare professional about information regarding COVID-19, 811 is the number that you call. 911 is an emergency because there is an immediate threat to a person's health or well-being. They are in distress, not merely coming down with what might be a cold or might not be a cold. It's important that we keep these lines clear for emergencies for people who need them when seconds will mean the difference between life, limb, and recovery. I want to welcome to the airwaves here a representative from the Provincial Executive Committee of the Ambulance Paramedics of BC Union. It's CUPE Local 873, Warren Leed, joining us. Good morning. How are you?
Hi, Adam. Happy to be with you. I'm well, thank you.
I'm not surprised to hear that about 3/4 of all the calls coming into 911 dispatch are related to suspicions of COVID-19. What is the situation out there?
That seems to be the numbers so far. Situation, that's a large question. With regards to calls, it looks like calls like motor vehicle accidents and other kind of congestion-related issues are down, with large chunks of our populations obviously self-isolating at home. So we're receiving fewer calls about that. Also, falls and assaults, workplace accidents, as you can imagine, are down as well.
Yeah. What's the situation with PPE, personal protective equipment? We know it is a matter of concern across much of the developed world right now. How are BC's ambulance paramedics stocked?
How are we stocked?
Do you know?
Like we don't have the exact numbers, but it looks like that having to share with all of PHSA, we've had to change how we go about our business. The risk still remains high, but the paramedics are cautiously optimistic with regards to Minister Dix and Dr. Henry's recommendations, and we are approaching our calls with assuming that what they say is true with regards to how protected we are.
How is the work changing for a paramedic amidst COVID-19? Because we've seen pandemics before, we've seen bad flus before. How are things different this time?
Different. We have seen, we saw SARS, we saw H1N1, we saw H1N5. This is different, however. On a global scale, it's unprecedented, obviously. The risk is still high. The paramedics are generally exhausted by the end of the day. Again, we are optimistic. So we've had to go about our business a little bit differently. Our approach now is to assume that every patient is a potential carrier of COVID-19. But it's like a protracted multiple casualty incident. There's lots of unknowns right now, but from what I can tell you, we are trained for this type of thing, and we're very good at this type of thing. We're just not used to the volumes in these types of calls. For example, like 75% of your calls, as you said, are COVID or ILI related. These calls take longer. We have to take extra precautions. It tasks us a little bit more. We have to prepare more. We have to be hypervigilant. Sometimes they can take twice as long to do an ambulance call. So all of those stresses you can imagine are taxing on us.
My understanding is that guidelines have been provided with new protocols for COVID-19 to ensure safety, including an initial assessment in the doorway while standing a minimum of 6 feet away from a person, also using proper protective equipment. How does that work?
How that works, at first the calls come in. We're using, from what I understand, a Manchester triage system, which can filter through the calls. It's based on presenting signs and symptoms, right, without making assumptions about the underlying diagnosis. So what that does is filter through and actually gets the ambulance to the people that needs it. And now, so what we're doing, obviously, is we are limiting the amount of people responding to the calls. which is a good thing, particularly with regards to people contracting it, but also conserving PPE. And then one paramedic would typically, when dispatched, go to the door and kind of like do a doorway assessment. And what we do differently now is we show up with a mask on and the visor on and our gloves on at the door, and we assess it from there, and we don't get anybody else engaged unless we have to. Having said that, if we do determine that we have to go in and do a critical intervention, we will get fully gowned up and just go in and do things business as usual.
Our guest is Warren Leed. He's on the Provincial Executive Committee of Ambulance Paramedics of BC, QP Local 873. They're members, of course, seeing changing circumstances due to COVID-19. Anything else you'd like to touch on with our audience today before we wrap up?
Well, yeah, I'd like to wrap up with, on behalf of all our critical care paramedics, advanced life support, infant transport teams, like a primary care paramedic, our emergency responders, paramedic specialists. There's a lot. Paramedic practice educators, our community paramedics, our emergency medical dispatchers and call takers. We just ask that the public continue supporting us with staying home if possible. And if not, please, follow safe distancing procedures, proper hand hygiene, and we do believe that through our efforts, we'll get through this. At some point, there will be some normalcy. But until that time comes, I just want the public to know that we're here for them, the paramedics. They're working around the clock. I'm so proud of them and our dispatchers. They're stepping up to our communities in this time of uncertainty, and, they're really rising up, in my opinion, to manage this unprecedented crisis. And, Adam, this is going to change. This is going to change how we approach medical calls, how British Columbia Emergency Health Services address and do our day-to-day business. We'll get through this first wave. The second wave and the third wave, there's really this will change everything that we do on the street level.
I think it's going to change everything we do beyond just the street level. But yeah, I do expect that it will, sir. So all the best to you and your members. And, I have to ask you, what's it like to be a person on the front lines every night at 7 o'clock when that cheer happens? What's that feel like?
Well, I got to say, Adam, I'm a little bit torn. I've been seconded to the executive committee, and typically I work on the street in Victoria. Yeah. But from what I hear and from what I've heard there, man, it's amazing because you forget about it and then you just start to hear it. And it's just, it lifts you up. It's amazing.
Good.
I'm getting emotional talking about it, actually.
Well, good. Pass on all our best and all our support to your membership. Let them know that all of us are behind them.
Thanks, Adam, and keep up the good work there with the good information, okay?
Absolutely. Warren Leed, stay safe. Bye now.
Thank you.
There we go, folks. We're going to get through this. Warren Leed is on the Provincial Executive Committee for Ambulance Paramedics of British Columbia. They are among our frontline healthcare heroes who are keeping us safe as we weather this wave of COVID-19 that is washing across the world.